Hi, I'm Alicia.
And I'm Robin, and you're listening to Bowel Moments,
the podcast sharing real talk about the realities of IBD. Served on the rocks. This week, we talked to Liam Robertson. Liam is living with ulcerative colitis in Scotland, and we talked to him about the lengthy process he went through to get diagnosed and how he wasn't believed along the way. We talked to him about the community that he's built around him and how he started sharing his story publicly. We talked to him about the books that he published and how he started sharing his story so publicly. And finally, we talked to him about Muay Thai. Cheers!
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Bowel Moments. This is Robin.
Hey, guys. This is Alicia, and we are absolutely delighted to be joined by Liam Robertson. Liam, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on.
We are very excited to talk to you. You are only the second person from the UK that has been on the show, and also you have a delightful accent, so we're real stoked about that. But
we do like an accent.
We do love an accent. First, very unprofessional question for you, though, is what are you drinking?
I don't know if this is probably quite unexciting, but it's like a tonic health drink, it's called. So it's got like 1,500 milligrams vitamin C, some other types of vitamins. I think it's got like 2,500 plant like nutrients in it. So I've made myself one of these. They're really good. They kind of actually give me a bit of mental clarity. I don't know if you ever have like this effervescent vitamin C, you know, like the 1,000 milligrams you put into water. But whenever I have them, I feel that this energy boost and a bit of mental clarity. So this tonic drink's got 1,500 milligrams of that. So when I have like something to do, like a podcast or some sort of like thing where I need to think and speak about stuff, I tend to have one of these, and I feel like it helps me along the way.
I mean, I guess we should have warned you that there's probably not a lot of thinking that happens on our podcast, but we appreciate that. We appreciate that you're preparing yourself for this.
Yes. Love it. Love it. Yeah.
Robin, what are you drinking?
I'm having coffee, hazelnut coffee, a little bit of cream in my lovely unicorn coffee mug.
Unicorns are the national animal of Scotland?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yes, they are.
You know what? That's a fact I only discovered in recent years.
Yes, they are.
I feel like I should have known that, but I was quite embarrassed when I found out, because it almost makes us feel like a bit like idiots, you know, that we've got like a creature that doesn't exist as our national animal, as opposed to something of some sort of like integrity, like a lion or even like a horse or something. You know, we've got a unicorn. It's like, it's just...
I like the whimsy of it. I appreciate it.
Mystical and magical. Yes.
But we're meant to be fearsome warriors. How can a unicorn be our animal?
It has a sword on its head, Liam.
Oh, I mean, it does. And I suppose maybe that kind of toughens up the glitter and glamour that comes with a unicorn.
I think you're thinking of My Little Pony. Like, that's not the same. That's not the same thing. I don't know. I'm going to find a fierce unicorn and send it to you.
Well, you know, maybe if William Wallace was on the back of it, wielding a 6-foot broadsword and the colours of his blue and white Scotland painted in his face, it maybe looks a little bit more.
Yes. The unicorn is painted in the blue and white as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, maybe your new national symbol could just be a unicorn riding on a Loch Ness monster, and you just like double down on it. Just double down on the mysticism. I like it.
While eating a haggis.
There you go. Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Listen, we'll come up with a whole marketing line for Scotland, and
yes,
between us, we can work on this.
We do love Scotland. Alicia, what are you drinking?
I am drinking a mimosa.
Champagne?
Yes.
Wow, nice.
What
time is it there at the moment?
Listen, Liam, you mind your own business.
As long as you're happy.
That's what I have to say to you. It is 10:13 a.m. So it's mimosa time. Next question for you, Liam, is tell us your IBD story. What brought you into our community?
Oh, so I think things started off me when I was about 20 years old, 21 maybe. I'm 35 now, so it's 15 years ago, roughly. I was on holiday in Spain. I came home and I got this crazy stomach cramps and basically run to the toilet, loads of blood. I thought that's really kind of scary. I thought am I dying or something. So I went to the doctor. They told me that it was like, they thought it was just like a stomach bug I picked up from holiday and that I was going to be fine. And then it continued for days until it got really bad to the point where like my cramps were so painful. Like I was like sweating, like almost passing out. I tried to phone an ambulance, couldn't get an ambulance. They wouldn't come. I don't know how it works in the US and stuff, but over here it's like, you get ranked on importance, and if you've got the ability to call, they basically just say no. Heart attacks and strokes are like obviously like quite high up the list, but anything else is like they just, a lot of the time they'll just say no because they can't. And so I had to try and make my own way to hospital, which was like a story in itself, because my partner at the time was obviously helping me, but she didn't drive, so I had to I basically run up to the car and laid towels down because I knew I was going to be bleeding. Laid towels down, and then I run back inside, got all my stuff on, and sat in the toilet because it was coming in waves, almost like what I imagine contractions are like, And every 10 minutes or so, it was coming on mega strong, then going away. I got in the car. I literally tried to drive to hospital. I got like 100 yards up the road. The cramp came on. I crashed my car, but I run my car into the curb, ruined all my wheels. It was like a crazy journey trying to get to hospital, because a lot of the time the pain was so bad I was closing my eyes and I was on the road. It was like really dangerous. But I got there. They admitted me and they said I had like gastroenteritis, like a viral gastroenteritis. So I was in hospital for about a week. And then when I eventually got out, the bleeding didn't ever stop. And I kept going back to my doctor and saying, look, this is bleeding and I'm getting cramps. And I'm like, oh, it's like, they kept saying it was like a carryover from the gastroenteritis. It was like a slow recovery and it was coming, it wasn't completely away. But this went on for weeks and months and months. And then eventually I was like, look, this can't be the gastroenteritis still. There's something wrong with me. I was bleeding in the toilet and bloating and cramps multiple times a day, every day. And every time I went to my doctor, they would take blood tests and do whatever and send my way. Never really took a real interest in me and used to almost argue with me about it. They basically said there's nothing wrong with you. And I remember one particular time, so they eventually sent me for a colonoscopy, but the bowel prep didn't work properly. So when they went in with the camera, they couldn't really see the bits that were inflamed. I think the bits that weren't covered, the bits they could see clearly, were really normal looking. And the bits that were they couldn't see at all must have been the inflamed bits, because they came back and basically said I didn't have inflammation there. It initially said inconclusive, but they says, well, you don't have a bowel problem. And I'm like, God, this is crazy, because I'm about a year, 18 months in now of going to the doctors almost every week and them telling me no. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense. I'm really unwell. So this went on and on and on. And then I remember the doctor had said to me one time, he fell out me and started I wouldn't say he was quite shouting, but he raised his voice and he was like, what do you want me to do? I've did all the tests. There's nothing wrong with you, kind of thing. Really aggressively with me in his kind of room. And I was just like, oh, is it normal to bleed from my bum 20 times a day? I'm asking you that. And he was like, well, I just can't. He basically insinuated that I was imagining it or I was making it up, which obviously sounds insane, because why would I be going there and making it up? So at the time I had because obviously in the UK you've got your National Health Service, but you've also got private health that you can get certain types of doctors and things through. So I went to a private hospital, and it was actually the same guy who does NHS stuff, but in the private hospital, for some reason, you're treated a lot better because you're paying for it. It's a much higher standard of service. And I don't think that's got anything to do with it, but because I'd done, this is my second go at bowel prep, I felt like I had a better understanding of what I needed to do and what it was going to be like. And I went in and I got a colonoscopy for the second time, and he came through straight away and just says, oh, you've got ulcerative colitis. And to be honest, I've never even heard the words before, because in the lead up to this, nobody had ever said to me, you might have ulcerative colitis. They'd mentioned IBS a couple of times, and they'd had heard the word IBD, but never Crohn's or colitis. So when he was diagnosing me, I was like, God, I can't wait for him to get out of the room so I could Google what colitis is and get my head around it, which, in hindsight is pretty stupid, because I had an expert in front of me who had been doing it for 30 years, and I was, for some reason, thought Google would be a better answer. So yeah, I got the diagnosis. It was 3 years in total from the first bit of illness to the time I was diagnosed, constantly being told that there was nothing wrong with me. So you can imagine, I didn't realize how tough it was at the time until years later, till I was writing the book and stuff, that I reflected back on that moment of not being given the proper like care and attention I should have from doctors. And I think I maybe even developed a bit of PTSD from it, because I was going to the hospital, like the doctors or the hospital. I went to hospital quite a lot too, in extreme pain, like in tears, like really bad. And they were just saying there's nothing wrong with you and then sending me home. And then I was going home, lying in my bed in pain, like confused, It really was like a dramatic, like everything that went on around that period was like almost, I would say, is life-changing, because the confusion, the pain, the struggles, and all the auxiliary things that affects in your life, at the time, because people were saying to me, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know. And then they look at you like you're like talking another language or something, I'm saying, like, I don't know what's wrong with me. And people would say, well, go to the doctor. I'm like, I go to the doctor like every 2 weeks or something, it was at the time. So yeah, it was tough. So then I started on a course of treatment. The mesalazine was the first one, which has never really done anything for me. And then I kind of went up and down with it. I went into an immunosuppressant drug called azathioprine, played with that for a while, upped my dose. I kind of got into remission and I thought, oh, things are great. And then I randomly just got ill again 6 months later. It's weird. It came on so gradually that I was on the golf, I was playing golf with my friend, and we got to like the end of the 18 holes. And years prior to this, I would have never managed that. I usually got maybe at the most halfway around and have to go back to the clubhouse and use the toilet. So we're on the 18th hole, and he just was like really casual, was like, oh, I didn't realize it, like you weren't ill anymore. I says, I am. And then he was like, but you're on hole 18, like you've not been to the toilet or nothing. It's like, how have you managed that? And I was like, oh shit, like I'm just got around the golf course, like a 4-hour trip around the golf course. How have I managed that? And then I realized that like it came on so gradually, me getting better, that I hadn't realized until these small things started to happen. And like I didn't believe it. Like I was so like, I'd been so like brainwashed into thinking that like it was, I don't know, like something I was going to be with for life and I was never going to get better. Like I woke up the next morning, I was like, right, I don't believe this. So I tried to like push myself to see if I was really ill. So like I got up and I put on a sweatsuit, like a big plastic sweatsuit, all my clothes on top of it, and went out doing like hill sprints, like trying to like put my body through some element of physical stress to see if it would result in some, my symptoms. And it didn't. And like I went into the toilet and stuff, but there was no blood. And I was like, what? This is like crazy. So then I like went to the gym later, tried to push myself really hard. I did everything you would think. I was fine. I think it was like a couple of days later, I went out like drinking with my friends, like heavily drinking. And I woke up the next day and my bowel wasn't great, but there was no blood. And I was like, I'm actually like potentially healed here. This is like something amazing. So yeah, I basically was in remission for a long time. 6 years it was, up until November last year. I came off my medication because my inflammation markers had been so low for so long, and basically flared up so bad. Ended up in hospital in November into December, like literally crazy bad. They went in with a camera for a sigmoidoscopy, and they basically, as soon as they went in, they pulled out and they went, oh no, you're away, like your bowel's going to perforate like now. And I was like, oh shit. And at this point, I'd also caught like a really bad virus in the hospital. It was just like a flu virus, but it like wiped me out so bad. And they were basically like, look, like you have to be realistic, like, this is not going to be good for you if this ruptures, like it was like life and death almost conversations, it was really serious. Because the thing is, they were going to offer me a biologic drug called infliximab, which is meant to rescue you from these like kind of like bad situations, but they wouldn't give me it because I had the flu so bad. They said it could have been fatal if I took it while I was ill with the flu. So I was like, oh shit. So I had to basically lie there for a few days waiting for the flu to go, waiting for my bowel to rupture. And luckily it got to day 4, the fluid started tapering off and my bowel hadn't ruptured yet. And they gave me infliximab and it basically saved me. And then this year, the infliximab, like 2 months later, the infliximab stopped working. I developed a fistula and I had to take antibiotics for the fistula. Took the antibiotics. It made me ill again, brought my symptoms back. So infliximab stopped working, played with it for a while, got a double dose of it. Didn't help. It actually made things worse, which is a bit of a paradox because you would think it would help even more, but it actually made me more ill. I don't know why. And then I moved on to Stellara, and I've been on Stellara for 4 months now. Starting to feel better, but it's pretty much been a full year and a flare. So that's a kind of small general roundup of my story without too many details. But yeah.
the whole, I mean, I recently went through that. Well, not recent, I guess it's been a few years now, but just that whole process of going back and forth with your doctor, like something is wrong. And, I didn't go through that the first time, but the second time when my diagnosis actually ended up changing from ulcerative colitis to Crohn's, I did have to go through that for months and months and months with my doctor and get a whole bunch of tests run, and with them telling me, nothing's wrong. It's just your ulcerative colitis, and me saying it's not. This is different. It feels different. The pain's different. It's in a different spot. This is not that. And so it was just, yeah.
It's completely soul destroying, isn't it? I think at the time I didn't, because I was a bit younger as well, I probably didn't really take time to self-reflect on everything that was going on. But years down the line, especially now when I take time to reflect on that, it was terrible, like really what I went through. Because I was also working full time at the time as well. So I was going back to work, being extremely unwell. And then my manager or my supervisor saying to me, like, what the hell are you doing? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I didn't have an answer, and I couldn't go off sick because they would tell me to go to the doctor and get a doctor's line, but I couldn't get a doctor's line because there was nothing wrong with me, apparently. It was like, it was terrible.
Yeah. Even with the tests for me specifically, like the blood work, your blood work is fine. I'm like, my blood work is lying to you because I am not fine. I'm telling you I'm not fine. I'm telling you I'm in pain. Like I don't know what else to I don't know what else to tell you. So eventually, once I was too sick, then it starts to show up, and it's like, okay, well, now it's past the point of no return. Now we're
too late. Totally.
Now, I don't want to say too late, because obviously not too late, but a little bit too late. Now there's repercussions. Now my body is weak, and it's not going to heal quickly, and the medications are not going to work as well as they would have if you had given them to me earlier on in the process, so it's very frustrating. And I feel like a lot of patients go through what you went through, what I went through, where it's just, I've said it on the show a couple of times and I'll say it again. Doctors should listen and believe us. Even if it ends up not being true, even if nothing ends up being wrong, good, great, then nothing's wrong. But at least start from the premise of, okay, something is wrong. Let's see if we can find out what that is, instead of saying this person is crazy or drug seeking or whatever those things are. At least start out with the idea that this person knows their body better than I do. They live with it every day. There is something wrong. Let's see if we can find it. And then if it turns out to be nothing, great.
And this kind of conversation I had with the GP at the time, because after I went for the initial colonoscopy that came back negative or inconclusive, they were like, see, there's nothing wrong with you. And I'm like, but it doesn't matter what any of your tests have said. I'm telling you, I'm bleeding from my bum 20 times a day. Like, that isn't the end of it. Like, surely you have to do more. And that's when they really started pushing the thing of the narrative of that maybe I was imagining it, or I was making it up, or that, I don't know, maybe it was something else, so that I was getting confused, as if like I didn't know my own body, and I didn't, I don't know, maybe as if I didn't know what blood was, or if I didn't know what a stool was meant to look like, or, So
did you drink a red drink? Did you eat a red vegetable?
No, I know.
Yeah. You're like, I don't eat that many beets. No.
Yeah, totally.
I think what you said is completely apt. I mean, it's soul destroying to have people not believe you when you know in your heart, deep down inside you that like something is not right. And so I think there is, having people question your sanity is so incredibly damaging. And I don't think people talk about that as much. I don't think that comes up very often, or as often as maybe it needs to be in like medical training, number one, but also in our like community. I feel like it's one of those where people kind of take it and hoard it away and sort of just are damaged by it, and then maybe don't talk about it as much as they could, or and it doesn't come up in the narrative as much. But I think it's just incredibly, incredibly damaging for that to be what happens to you as a patient as you're trying to get your diagnosis.
It really is. It's terrible. And I think it causes a lot of like problems, I don't know if like PTSD is the right word, but it definitely causes a lot of like trauma around like things to do with medical, like your health, and like health anxiety and all these kind of things.
Yeah, we've had a couple of guests on that's, what they're psychological researchers here and practitioners in the United States, and their research is on medical trauma and like basically that, like you said, post-traumatic stress disorder that comes from these medical encounters that can happen.
Mhm.
And one of the things we've talked to them about is, how do you help somebody who this has happened to them, but they have to go back to the place that's traumatized them over and over and over again? Like if it happens in war, somebody goes to war, they're like, and not at all minimizing this, but like if you go to Afghanistan, eventually you come home from Afghanistan and you're not in Afghanistan anymore. So you sort of removed yourself from that place. It doesn't mean that your symptoms go away or that you don't still have problems. But in the case of people with medical conditions, chronic health conditions, and the trauma comes from the medical system, you can't stop going to the hospital. You can't stop seeing your doctor. So it becomes a real challenge in trying to treat this in folks that, they're having to re-traumatize themselves on a regular basis. So
Definitely. Yeah, it really does.
So you wrote a book, you alluded to this here just a second ago, but you wrote a book in 2020 about kind of your journey. Things have evolved since then, but talk about what prompted you to write that book. Was it that you were standing on the golf course and you're like, listen, I've spent 4 hours and like my life has changed? What happened?
You know what? Well, by the time 2020 came, I'd already been in remission for like two years or so. And so what had happened was, in the lead up to that in 2019, I'd started out of boredom. I'd moved to a different city for a while. I was living in London. I didn't really know anybody. So I would go and train in the morning at the gym, and then I'd have a lot of spare time in the afternoon. So I was kind of like taking my laptop out and writing notes down and thinking of ideas of things I could do to be productive, really. And I've never been a writer, but I always enjoy a blank kind of page and being able to just put my thoughts down. Although I've never really done it, when I do write things, I kind of feel like I don't know, like an endorphins kind of thing from the writing. I find it very therapeutic. And even more so when I started writing about things that happened to me in the illness and my thoughts and stuff. So it was almost became like a journal. I was writing notes about things that happened, and then I try to reflect on the past and how I'd felt previously. And before I knew it, I'd written like a couple of thousand words or whatever, and I thought, wow, I could really like make something of this. So I decided to write it in a book format with no plan of ever publishing it, almost just like a book for myself. So I made chapters, I told a story, and then it got to the point where it was ready as a book, as a manuscript. And then I was like, oh, I can't, no way I could ever publish this, because I was too embarrassed. Because something that's really key for my story as well, that I kept it a secret my whole life, like the illness. I didn't tell people, didn't really tell my friends, didn't tell my family. Even when I was in hospital, I would play it down. I felt like I was embarrassed, I felt like it made me weak. I feel like it made me less of a man. It made me feel really like invaluable in a lot of ways. And I was worried about people finding out and maybe, I don't know, losing friends or messing up relationships or work stuff and just everything you could imagine. It just, all the negative thoughts and self-doubt and everything I put upon myself. So when the book was finished, I was like, oh, I can't publish this because I haven't even told people, never mind write a book about it for the world to know. So it wasn't even like everybody knew and I was writing a book. I was writing a book and nobody knew, which made it even more kind of special. And then I put it away for a couple of months, and then I moved back to Aberdeen. I was back living in Aberdeen, picked it up again near the end of 2019, did some more and thought, oh, it's not for me. And then 2020 lockdown happened. I was shielding, as a lot of us were. I wasn't able to go offshore to the oil rig, to my job. So I was doing kind of project stuff from home, and I was sitting at home, like, very bored in a tiny little 1-bedroom apartment, waiting for something to do or a job to come through or something that I could, from my employer, or something to keep me busy. And at nights as well, I was sitting, I didn't even leave my house. I was so feared for the COVID thing at the time. I had a friend who was a doctor who messaged me at the time and says, oh, Luke, are you on azathioprine? Which I was at the time. And, somebody who I trust as well. Like, it's not like it's not made up or trying to fear me. She was like, Luke, you better not go outside, because if you get COVID, you're going to die. She genuinely believed that. And I suppose this is how bad it was. I wouldn't even open my windows because I was worried about breathing in potential COVID in the air. Like I was really, really taken from all the propaganda, or however you want to call it, that was put around COVID at the time. So I spent a lot of time in my living room on my sofa with my laptop, like doing nothing, and decided to get it out and try and get a cover designed and all this kind of stuff, got in touch with people, how to publish books, researching it, and then eventually got to the point where it was ready as a book. And I just thought, you know what, I've just got to do it. So I published the book, and then I quickly realized, hold on, nobody's going to buy this book because there's nobody telling people about it, So I had to create a social media page to then contact people, and then suddenly I built this community that was like life-changing, because I went from being somebody who'd kept it a secret, was really embarrassed about everything, didn't want people to know, especially when I was really ill and I was having accidents and having to pull over my car and take a shit outside, places. I was mortified, I felt like I was like a disgusting, like I was a weirdo, like all these kind of things. And then I created this page and I met all of these hundreds, well, thousands of people now, and realize, everybody, that happens to everybody, and I'm not alone, and I'm not a weirdo, and I'm not disgusting. I'm just like, I have an illness, and this is completely expected as part of the illness. And it's something that I've done a lot of work with recently. Is I find it really frustrating how when you get a diagnosis for a disease like this, they tell you about the symptoms and the treatments, but they never tell you, by the way, you're probably going to lose some friends, you're probably going to shit yourself, you're probably going to have an impact on your career, it's going to affect you financially. Nobody ever had that conversation with me. Nobody said it was going to affect my mental health. That these conversations are not held from a medical kind of environment, and from their perspective, nobody had that conversation with me. So when I met all these people online that I was trying to promote my book to, I quickly realized they weren't just people I was trying to sell my book to. They became like friends in a community, and I became a real pillar of the community. I feel like I've got so many people now who I speak to on a regular basis. I've got people from all over the world who have read my book and get in touch with me. So I'll get, some days I'll have as much as 100 DMs, from people. And sometimes one or two of them will be from a random person from somewhere in the world getting in touch with me, extremely upset and desperate because their 5-year-old son or something's been diagnosed with Crohn's disease or whatever, or colitis, and they're struggling. They don't know what to do, and they're coming to me for help. It's like, although it's horrible to hear these things, it's almost like nice in a way that I feel that I can almost communicate these lessons that I've learned about living with the disease and be able to give back like what I've learned to people. And it almost works as therapy for myself. When I'm trying to speak to someone about saying, oh, don't worry, it's going to be okay, I'm actually almost telling myself that, and it's something I never had the ability to do in the years leading up to this, because I've kept it to myself. I suffered in silence, and I feel like I've learned a lot of lessons from the book now, from publishing that book, and everybody I've met, it's like been completely life-changing, to be honest. So I'm glad I've done it.
I want to ask about your children's books too, but I'm curious, I'm going to ask you a different question first.
Okay.
I know one of the things that happened after we started this podcast is I know every once in a while, going from being somebody who's perhaps a little more contained with their story and not sort of being as public and open about it, and going from like not sharing to like sharing very publicly, that's a huge swing. I'm curious if you had a little, and this has happened with Robin a couple of times, where she'll say something on the podcast and then she'll email me later and be like, oh my God, please take that out. She has what we refer to as the vulnerability hangover, where, now you've put yourself out there and all of a sudden you're like, oh God, what have I done? I mean, you went from telling nobody to telling thousands of people, the entire world. So curious, how did you have that vulnerability hangover? What happened after that?
Yeah, what's really strange is the vulnerability thing comes from me when I have to address it with people who know me, like from my local town or whatever. Because when I meet someone from somewhere else in Scotland or England or Ireland or Wales or America, Canada, Australia, whatever, I feel really open, and I never feel like I ever say something that makes me feel vulnerable or feel bad or feel like, oh shit, I wish I didn't say this. Whereas now, if I don't know, like if somebody like messages me or bump into somebody and they ask about stuff, that's when I feel vulnerable, because I don't know why, but it's like you have a certain life and a character and a perception that people have of you, and then actually then this is the real me, because that was almost a facade for hiding my illness. And then when I have to break it down a little bit and let the people who previously knew me and know who I really am now, I can see it in their faces, like they're confused and they don't understand and they don't like it. It's like, it's almost like I don't know, they almost roll their eyes. They must think like I'm exaggerating or making it up because they see other parts of my life and probably think that, well, you can't be doing that if he's ill, or, you know. So there's definitely bits I've said or done. And I mean, I shared my book on my personal Instagram page and a lot of people shared it and got in touch. But even now, I still got anxiety moments thinking about some of the messages I've had from people that I know maybe are not my friends. You know, do you have like, I don't know, you will probably have this as well, but I have a lot of people on my personal, like when I had Facebook, I don't anymore. I have a personal Instagram page who are my friends, but they're not my friends. They're like associates that I've met along the way, and definitely not necessarily all them people who definitely want what's best for me or like me, you know, like haters and stuff. And when I think about the fact that they know that I'm ill and I've got a book, it fills me with so much anxiety. And sometimes I wish I could have just like not let them seen it or something, you know, rewind a little bit. But yeah, I would say that's my most vulnerable kind of moments.
I would agree in the sense that, first of all, Alicia never takes out the part that I want her to take out. So whenever I email her and say, take that out, she never does. So that is good. I do appreciate that she doesn't.
There's been a couple of times where I did take something up because I was like, okay, yeah. But you're right. I
for the most part, you don't.
And I'm a terrible person now, I realize. Sorry.
No, you're not. No, you're not, because it's important to share that. But I would agree with you in the sense that I don't mind being vulnerable with other patients. I feel like being vulnerable with other patients is the real deal and what we should be, because it's a way to help people understand that they're not alone. When I get that vulnerability hangover, it is that feeling of, I do put on a good show for people. When I put on a really good show for people of like, you know,
you do.
Here's this.
100%.
Here's this. I put on a good show for like people.
Horribly sick for like a whole full year, and then every time I see her, she'd be like, "I'm good, great, everything. How are you?" And then she'd immediately turn it back to me, and I'm like, "You little mastermind, you."
Yeah, I mean, I've said it on the show before. When I went in for surgery and had to tell my coworkers that I was going out on medical leave, several people messaged me privately and were like, "We didn't even know you were that sick." And like, I can put on a good show for people. I'm good at tap dancing around it, and so that's the part that it's like a little gut punch that was like, oh, everyone can see behind the curtain now. So I just have that feeling of, I'm letting everybody see behind the curtain.
Yeah.
Is there also is there also for both of you kind of a little bit of a fear that, I don't know how to say this, but like almost like because you've put on such a good show and all of a sudden you've had to let people know that you're not doing well, that all of a sudden you're worried that people won't take you seriously as well, because now like you kind of in essence lied to them for a while and they don't now. Every time you say I'm fine, are you going to have to go, are you really fine? You're going to have to answer that every time. Is there like a little piece of that has like a component of that to it?
I kind of get what you're saying. I would say no for me. I think mine is the opposite. It's almost like I don't think people believe that I'm as unwell as I am because of maybe how I present myself, you know, like, and I hate saying things like this because it makes me feel bad. It's maybe a bit controversial, but I'm very against the selfie in the hospital bed type of photos that, although I've done them now myself for content, to be honest.
Yep. Same.
But they definitely aren't for attention, where like somebody got in touch with me a while ago asking to make a video, and they wanted like a video of me at my healthiest and a video of me when I'm extremely unwell. And I said, I don't have videos of me extremely unwell. And this is, well, why? And I was like, well, because when I'm extremely unwell, the last thing I'm doing is taking a selfie, like it is. And even on my page, I have a selfie of me in the hospital bed. That was like after everything, when I was slightly better, you know. That wasn't me when I was extremely unwell, you know. It was like after the surgery or after the whatever had happened, the colonoscopy or whatever it was. Never when I'm at the height of my illness. And I think because maybe when I go out the house, I always make sure I'm dressed appropriately and I look a certain way, and you know, I don't go out looking like I'm unwell. I go out trying to look good, you know, like. And I think people look at me and they think, oh, he's fine, he's not unwell.
I'm with you, Liam. I am not taking selfies when I mean, I do now for content too, for the podcast, but I do not do that. I did not do that before.
Even the ones that you do post on like our socials, because obviously Robin being the one living with inflammatory bowel disease, you know, our content, a lot of it is driven by her. She's also our social media person. So there you go. But even the pictures like you're posting, Robin, is like you in a hospital gown being like, yeah, thumbs up.
Yeah,
and I'm like,
not like, yeah. And
I know you feel like shit.
Here's a little info. I did come with me to get a PillCam, scope or whatever. And I never posted an update after that because I didn't get great news. And I never posted any information about a follow-up scope that I had. I never posted any follow-up information about anything. Oh, I did say it's scope day, but I didn't say why I was getting another scope. Nothing like that. So because I'm going through it right now, which is probably why I got so emotional when you were talking about like all that stuff earlier too, because I'm not having a great time right now with my IBD and I'm not using that for content. So it's,
That's got to be incredibly difficult for both of you though, because you're right. Like now this is part of your life is this connection that you've gotten online. And like you said, Liam, it's really life-changing to start to talk to people who really, really understand it. But at the same token, it does then require you to kind of put a lot more of yourself out there than you typically be comfortable with. And Liam, I mean, granted, I don't know a lot about the industry that you're in, but like, it's kind of a man's man kind of industry, right? Like, it's kind of a, like, I mean, you do Muay Thai, you're like, you fight people and you like, you fight people for fun, but and you work on an oil rig and these are like very manly things. And I think there is kind of this stigma attached to like showing vulnerability in that type of environment.
And I think that's one of the problems. Like when I've been at work before and I've been unwell, we have a medic on the rig, and the medic they're always ex-Marine. They're like, what's the word? I can't remember the type of like emergency type like trauma. They're used to like being in a situation where somebody's had their leg blown off and they're running to try and save them. So when I walk in smiling, saying my stomach's not good, they go, "Oh, go and get some water, you'll be fine," and they send you out because my leg's still attached I'm still, I can see and I've got all my limbs or whatever. They just think you're fine. It's like a different level of, which is they're probably good type of people to have in case there's a serious incident on the rig where, something's exploded and, they're trying to keep someone alive. I mean, great, but not when you've got like an invisible illness. It's like the worst type of person to go and see who's used to tragedy, because they look at you like you're kind of taking the piss, they're going, come on, you're fine, and it's like, well, I'm not, and about the Muay Thai thing as well, I think it's one of the problems. Like people probably look and think, oh, he trains Muay Thai and he works on oil rig and stuff. How can he be ill? It just doesn't like.
This dude's a badass. He's awesome. He's fine. He's invisible illness. No way. And you're like, no, totally. I have a badass. Not only am I a badass, but I also have a badass.
Yeah, totally. It's so true.
I'm going to back you up to being an author and children's books. So when did you write these children's books? So first of all, your book is called More Than Meets the Eye, Living with Ulcerative Colitis. That's your memoir type book. Right. And your children's books are from Jack Jupiter.
Yeah. So what happened was, like I kind of briefly browsed over earlier, but I get messages quite regularly from people who've got 6 children who looks like they're going to have Crohn's colitis. I think the youngest was 2, around that they think. I don't know if they get like officially diagnosed with it at that age, but they're told that that's what it looks like, kind of thing. And I get these all the time. And I thought, God, it'd be so good to have a book that maybe, initially my idea was to a book that explained about chronic illnesses for children that was like nice and colorful and picture books and everything that made it easy for them to understand. And then I kind of more drifted in the sense of, it'd be quite cool if, there was maybe a focus on stomach illnesses like Crohn's and colitis or IBS or whatever. And I made a superhero type kid who, despite his illnesses, was still cool and was still going around the world doing good deeds and exciting things and everything that made him who he was. And I thought maybe if a child who was ill could read these books and realize that Jack has an illness and he's turned it into a positive by doing all these amazing things, that maybe they could be a little bit more like Jack, and not let themselves wallow in, pain and suffering, because if you start, I mean, I can't even imagine if you've had that from a young age and that's your life, that must be really, really horrible, So I started writing the books. They're little picture book rhyming stories. They all rhyme and they're all picture books and they're just adventures of Jack. And he basically has his tummy illness has given him superpowers that allow him to fly and do other good deeds. And so it's basically the adventures of him. There's 6 of them out. Well, there's 5, and then the 6th one comes out next week, a Christmas special. And then so that's Jack Jupiter.
And I love that he has fart-powered superpowers.
Yeah. Uses his tummy illness to propel him into the air, and other stuff. He defeats evil robots and things like this in the stories. So yeah,
That's so cute. I love that. And I think you're right. I mean, presenting this in such a cute way, I think is going to allow a lot of kids to feel a little bit more different. I mean, what's interesting though is you say it must be kind of horrible to have this as a child, but I don't know, some of the kids that we've talked to that have been diagnosed so young, it's like they just don't know any different. And so it's just
they grow up with it. Yeah.
And so it's just I think there is something maybe a little bit different around like getting it when you've lived half part of your life. You lived 20 years before all of a sudden like this kind of happened. So
I think like there's a girl who I'm friends with on Instagram who've had it from a young age from school and stuff. So basically she would like have to go to the toilet a lot during classes, and her teachers like didn't believe her, so they would say no. And then she got to the point where she was like having to like beg, and then she would go to the toilet and her teachers would follow her to the toilet and spy on her because they thought she was like smoking or taking drugs and stuff. They wouldn't believe that she had a bowel illness. They made it basically that she was lying. They made it all up.
So
I suppose if you're diagnosed officially from a young age, you've maybe going in with a diagnosis. But if these things start happening when you're young and you're in school and you don't have the official diagnosis yet, you're not in a good place. Because schools are like, I mean, I don't know what's like where you are, but Scotland's one of the bullying capitals of like the world. Bullying's quite bad in Scotland, and I imagine if you're the kid who shits himself all the time and has to go to the toilet, I mean, your life's not going to be very easy.
No. I did not know that Scotland is the bullying capital, or bullying is such a problem.
I don't know the official statistics. I've just read things about it before, and then it just made me think, well, you know what? Thinking back about school, I mean, it was some people got it really bad, like physical, like physical bullying, not just like verbal, terrible things. But back to the book stuff. Yeah, so the whole thing about the books was to make these young people feel good, and then so I've actually started writing. I've got like about 15 books I'm writing. I've got like a weird attention thing where I'll do one book and then I'll be 1,000 words in and I'll have an idea for another one and I'll start doing something else. So I really need to focus better. But I've got a sequel coming to my colitis book. I've not revealed the title yet, but it's basically a collection of the lessons that I've learned through living with a chronic illness. So obviously my first book was just my basically memoirs, just like a story of living with the disease. And now this is going to be things I've learned from myself and other people's stories. And it's going to be a book to read when you're suffering, and it's going to have advice and calls to action, like of things you can, tangible things you can actually go and do and think about to help you through your life with a chronic illness. So yeah, that's well in motion now, good progress. So I'm going to hopefully that's going to be ready at some point, maybe summer next year. And I also have a Jack Jupiter for slightly older kids, not so much for the rhyming picture books for the children, but it's going to be slightly older kids where it's like more like a superhero coming of age type Jack when he starts as Jack Jensen and before he becomes Jack Jupiter, before he gets his superpowers and his illness. And it's a story of him and how it all comes together, and it's kind of an adventure story for kids, So that's going to be at some point next year as well.
That's so cool. I love that.
It is so cool. I love it.
Thank you.
What has been the response to your book? Have you gotten some really interesting, like far-flung countries that you didn't expect, some people sending you feedback on that, or what's been the response to both of these books, the series and your memoir?
Well, I've not had much to the Jack Jupiter. It's not sold as well as I hope, to be honest. I've had very little feedback. I've had a few messages from people who said, their son or daughter or whatever really enjoyed it, but the feedback's not been good. But my colitis book has had like amazing feedback. I don't really use Facebook. I actually deleted it now, but for a long time I had a profile and just didn't go on it ever. And I went on to my message requests. You know how you have a requests folder and it's like people you're not friends with who have tried to contact you? And I literally had, like it was in over 100 messages from people from all over the world, like mostly the UK, but around Europe, Australia, like Canada, the US. Try to think what else. It's some odd places. There's been so many places. But anyway, people messaging me basically saying, like, thank you so much for sharing your story. Don't feel alone. I feel like it's helped me so much. And, to be honest, it's so intense and powerful, some of the messages. I almost get embarrassed because I'm like, I can't believe, like, surely, like, this is not having this effect, but it must be because, I spoke to someone recently who had a book deal and they said that, like, they couldn't get in with any of the big publishers because they like your book stuff had at least 1,000 sales. And she says, like, mine has only had 200 or 300. And I thought, I thought, well, my book sold like 200 in 1 month. And it made me realize that my book has attained reach that is not normal for an indie author. It's obviously like, it's strange for me to be in the UK and have someone, in Australia message me about how much they love my book, or in America or Canada. And it's just, it's different when it's somebody in the UK because it feels more relatable. But there's people from, Holland and Germany that buy my book that the English isn't their first language, and they're messaging me about the book. It's really, really nice. And I've had so much wonderful messages from people. A lot of people who read the book don't have IBD, but their children do, or they have family members. Like, there's a lot of people who've maybe got a husband or a wife who has it, and they've read the book, and they've got in touch to say thank you for helping them understand. And even people have been saying like they're like giving the book to their employer because they want their employer to understand what they go through. So it's not all just family and friends. That it goes a bit further. Because see, when I was diagnosed, it was all basically, it was medical facts and things about how the symptoms you should expect, the kind of treatments you can do, the fact that there's options of surgery and blah blah blah. The only books I could find were books about how to cure IBD, diet type books and stuff online. There was nothing. I literally could not find a piece of like information that was going to be like, by the way, this is what your life's going to be like. This is the personal upsets of living with a horrible disease. I couldn't find anything that really told that story. And that's when I was like, I really need to publish this book so that people can read my story and relate, because not everyone like me has someone they know who has a similar disease and they can relate to them, feel so bad. I thought, I kept it to myself and suffered in silence, like tortured myself. How many other people in the world are going through what I went through, like suffering in silence and feeling like they're all alone? Like, if I'd went on to Google and typed, then and found a book about someone's living experience with it and reading everything that person went through, i.e. me, I feel like it would have been life-changing for me back at diagnosis stage. I would have probably been more open to speak to people and addressed it, and be more firm with doctors and not felt so freaked out and felt so stressed and, everything that comes along with it. I feel like it would have made me everything in my life better and easier and more relaxed and just improve my life, and I feel like my book has done that now. So I feel like it's a great accomplishment. I'm really happy.
Yeah, it's a huge accomplishment. And I think putting yourself out there is so, so important. And like you said, allowing people to learn from you and to help figure out how they advocate for themselves. And I love this idea of creating a book specifically for times when people are struggling, because that is the time that you need to hear somebody's story of resilience, or to hear, okay, this is the thing that helped me get through that. So I think that's a really cool idea. Yeah. It's a nice addition to your library of books.
Totally.
I want to talk Muay Thai because what the hell?
Okay. Exactly.
I am very, very curious about this Muay Thai thing. This is something you do for fun? Is it something you did for fun before your diagnosis? Like, had you already gotten involved in like Muay Thai or like that kind of field before you were diagnosed with ulcerative colitis, or is this something you've done after?
You have to tell people who don't know what it is, first start with what it is, and then start with how you got involved in it.
Good call, Robin.
So Muay Thai is like a traditional martial arts that originated in Thailand. It's similar to boxing and kickboxing. They call it the art of the 8 limbs. So it's punching, kicking, knees and elbows is the idea. You can clinch and hold and stuff as well. It's all standing. So, when someone goes down, they get a count or whatever, and you continue. So that's the general martial arts of it. I think it was taught a lot to like the Thai, like maybe armies, and it was like a tribal thing almost. It was like their fighting skill and what they did for protection. It's taken up a lot in the Western world, even more so over the last 10, 20 years. It's got really popular. I started at around the same time I got ill, to be honest, which is strange. I think I first started maybe around 2010, 2011. I only went because in my gym where I used to train, my old gym, there was like a gym hall, and the windows from the weights room used to look down into the gym hall, and I used to see like the class going on and watch it happening, people kicking pads and doing skipping and different stuff, So I always thought, oh, it looks pretty cool. And then one of my friends says, oh, I'd love to go. And I was like, oh, I want to go, and then it became an obvious thing, we'll go together and see how it is. And then I went. I got really into it for a while. I was training every day, really enjoyed it. And then I was like, oh, I would like to compete and have a fight. So like at the time, obviously what tends to happen in fighting sports is people don't fight at their natural walking around weight that they normally are. What they do is they do weight cuts to bring them down to the next weight division so that they're much bigger in that weight division than they would be in the weight division from their normal weight walking around. So I spent some time dieting, got down to weight, and then we had a fight set up, and then something happened and the show got called off. And I'd spent like 2 months dieting really hard and like training really hard. And I was like, oh, God. So I went away partying and binge eating and doing all the normal bad stuff. And then I got a call saying, like there's a fight in like 3 weeks. Like, do you want to take it? And I said, yeah, okay. So I took it. So it's called an interclub at the time. But so an interclub fight is in theory, it's almost meant to be like an exhibition between two clubs. So there'll be like a local Muay Thai club or whatever would come to another club, and you would set up people to have a fight. But some gyms it gets really rough. In my particular gym, for some reason, it was the interclubs always go out of hand. They were just like real Muay Thai fights. They weren't like exhibitions. There was people getting actually knocked out. Like actually unconscious and broken noses, and it was just like a real fight. So I had a fight then. I won by TKO, like a technical knockout or something in the second round. And then I really just went off it. You would think winning, I would be keen, but I just went off it. And I was like, I couldn't be bothered anymore. Started partying. I went on a holiday, drinking, and then I got into lifting weights again and went more into doing that kind of stuff and lost the buzz for it. And then in about 2017 or something, 2018 maybe, I started taking an interest in it again, started training again. And then I went to Thailand. I trained in Thailand, and I went to a gym in Thailand. And when I went to the gym and I started training, I realized I was better than most of the people in the gym. And I thought, and they were all fighting. They were all fighters, And I thought, God, I should really be fighting. So I went back to Thailand a couple of months later and did like a proper fight camp and had a fight and stuff. Then I won that fight as well by knockout in the third round. And then I was planning to make a real hobby of it, fighting regularly and seeing what I could do. And then COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, I was shielding. So then I wasn't exercising, and then I got fat. And then I ate loads of chocolate. I was living by myself at the time. And so I was basically just ordering food every day and, takeaways and, all the kind of, I don't know if you've got Deliveroo over there. I don't know what you call it, like Uber Eats type of thing, but I would just be ordering like Chinese food and burgers and eating chocolate and just feeling sorry for myself because I was stuck in my house playing PlayStation and watching YouTube and, just trying to make the most of my time. And before I knew it, I was like multiple stones, or pounds overweight, I was like, I put on like crazy amount of weight, like I think in lockdown alone, I put on like 40 pounds or something, it was like a lot. And then I tried to get back into training a little bit in 2021. And then I got a damaged disc in my back during training, a bulging disc, mid-2021. I've been in and out with chiropractors and osteopaths constantly since. And then I've started trying to train a little bit this year, but obviously I've been so unwell with the flare-up. It's been a nightmare. So pretty much my Muay Thai career is definitely on hold, if not finished. But I enjoy training nonetheless.
That's really hardcore. Did you do any, like, were you some sort of contact sport player before this too?
No, I was never very, to be honest, I've never been a natural athletic person. I used to hate gym, I don't know what you call it, we'll call it in school, but in gym or PE, physical education or whatever, I used to hate it for some reason. I used to hate being sweaty and, I wasn't an athletic type person in school. I was very more an art. I've played guitar since I was like 7 years old. I loved music class. I loved art. I was more of an arty, creative person than I was a gymmy kind of dude. So it really wasn't natural to me at all. Even footballs, I mean, everybody here plays football or soccer, you call it. That's the main sport here in the UK, and everybody does it. And if you don't do it, you're not cool. And it was like weird if a guy didn't want to play football. And it was never my thing. I played a little bit when I was young, and then I went off it. And so getting into a kind of contact sport, get into a sport at all was quite a big deal, but a contact one even more so. Yeah, but I feel like I just fell in love with it. I just liked everything about it. I feel like there's a lot of tradition and stuff that goes along with it. And the whole thing of going to Thailand was huge because, especially the second time, because, I've traveled there by myself, I was living in the gym. The gym had like rooms above the gym. So I lived at the gym and, I used to eat with the Thai people and like trying to embrace the culture. So it was like a hugely like exciting, like emotional journey as well, because I met all these amazing people, like, people from like a guy from America I became really close with, North Carolina he lives in, a guy from Virginia, people from Ireland, people from Australia, like we all became very close friends. And, like it was just a great journey. Like, even though I was only there for a couple of weeks each time, it was really exciting. And the whole Muay Thai thing was just so special and so nice to be over there and do that, like being able to take part in their national sport and like compete and stuff. And I mean, when you're in the bubble, it's not a big deal because I know people who live there and fight there every couple of weeks now, but when you're not in that bubble, I just think from an outside view, it's pretty cool to have done it.
Yeah, it sounds like it was created a real sense of community, which is fascinating, but it is difficult to think of somebody just suddenly jumping into like that type of a contact sport too. Cause I mean, it's kind of a 0 to 60 kind of, not going from like not playing any type of, sport, but definitely not a contact sport into like kicking somebody in the head. It just, that's a big range.
It's huge. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Pretty intense.
It's funny. Yeah, it's very intense. And you know what as well, I said to people, I suffer anxiety quite a lot. Like I had it before IBD as well as a child, but I didn't realize. And the moment immediately after that fight in Thailand, after I won, it was like every piece of anxiety I've ever had was gone. And like, it was like this like invigorating feeling of like the truly happy and content and like, I can't explain. There's something really, what's the word? The whole thing of being hand-to-hand combat and being in a battle and maybe taking some damage and then overcoming it and then winning. There's like a huge, like, not tribal, but there's something in you that's like really like ancestrally, of like battle and, winning a battle and overcoming something and going through the pain. And it's huge. And it just made me feel so like amazing inside. Like it was like a high that I couldn't come down off of for weeks. It just made me feel like on top of the world. I really understand now why people do it. It's worth the potential pain and suffering that comes from a fight. I hope I put that across.
Yeah, no, you did. I'm just thinking like at nearly 46 years old, I don't know that this is something I'm suddenly going to take up, but I kind of want to now. There's a part of me that's like, do I need to start fighting people?
Yes.
I feel like I could be good at it, Robin.
I think you could definitely be good at it, Leisha.
Thanks, Robin. I appreciate that.
Thank you so much for taking so much of your time to talk to us today. This has been a great conversation, and it is time for the last question. So what is the one piece of advice that you have for the IBD community?
Well, I kind of touched on it earlier, but my one piece of advice is 100% is about whether it's home or online, find a community of people you can speak to about your problems, because I kept mine to myself for far too long. And I didn't realize how badly I was suffering, like mentally and physically, like not having that support network around me until later. And I reflected back on it. And now that I have thousands of people on my Instagram that I speak to on a daily basis, pretty much, I don't know how I ever managed without it before, not having the people to speak to. And if you're not somebody who likes online, you don't want to go online and speak to strangers, find a friend or a family member who you can trust and confide in, somebody who you know is a compassionate and understanding person, most importantly. And don't hold back, like be honest, like tell them exactly how you're feeling, tell them everything that's going through your mind, how depressed and down and anxious and how shitty it makes you feel. Tell them everything, tell them every little tiny bit. And I think you'll be surprised how better you feel after it.
That is great, great, great advice. It has to be somebody that you can trust with every tiny piece of it, because if you're holding on to any of it, it grows and it takes over. I'd love that you made sure to say every little tiny piece of it. It's so important. Thank you so, so much.
Liam, thank you again so much for being on the show. We really enjoyed getting to know you and definitely hope you'll come back again. But and thank you everyone else for joining us as well. And cheers, guys.
Cheers, everybody.
Thank you so much. Hey, this is Liam. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate it, review, subscribe, share it with your friends. Thank you.